Hey friends, it's Melvin. Thanks for tuning into this episode. Here's just a few quick things I wanted to notify you guys about before we get started. First up, very soon, new episodes will be releasing Wednesday mornings rather than Tuesday. So don't panic if you don't see a new episode on Tuesday. Just wait a little longer and you'll see it in your feed. Second, we've introduced a mailbag. Check those show notes and toward the bottom you'll see a mailbag link. You'll then be able to text us any questions you might have about movies, the movie industry, or any movie/Christian related questions you might have. Then we'll respond in a future episode, so send us your questions now. Up next, Patreon polls, which are available to Patreon supporters at the $3 tier or higher, have been updated. Supporters can now suggest films or shows to be reviewed at the end of each month. The two most liked submissions will become the options for the Patreon poll, so if you want to hear us talk about your favorite movie or show, join our Patreon and start campaigning. And lastly, whether you're a new or longtime listener, please consider writing a review or rating the Cinematic Doctrine podcast on iTunes and Spotify. Apart from financially supporting on Patreon, these are the two most helpful ways to support the show. And that's it. Enjoy the episode. You're listening to Cinematic Doctrine.
So initially we were going to kind of have like 2 weeks where we didn't have to record or anything. We just had to look forward to the Batman coming out March 3rd or whatever. Because Daniel and I had basically recorded 2 episodes the first time we got together to record. And then I watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre on Netflix. And I texted him and was like, okay, are you free Monday? And so here we are. It's Monday, 8 o'clock, 8:30, whatever. We've been talking for a while. I had a full day of work and I have many more days of work and I will find time to edit this to have it released the same week. Here we are. Hi, Dan. How are you?
I'm good. I'm okay.
That's good. Thanks for answering my question.
You already asked me that earlier, so I wasn't sure if you want me to say something different.
Dan, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm okay.
Okay, cool. Glad to hear that nothing changed in the last 3 seconds and the last 40 minutes of the other time that I asked you. Has anything happened in the last few days that you wanted to share about? Any confessions?
No. I confess that I'm not a massive fan of the Texas Chainsaw franchise as a whole.
Okay, as a whole.
I like the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre quite a bit. It's a really great film. It's a great horror film. But I'm not a humongous fan of the franchise, partially for reasons that we'll get into probably in this review, which is that it's one of the most inconsistent horror franchises. So I wasn't particularly excited when you were like, okay, like I really want to do a thing on this movie, and part of me was kind of curious because it immediately got a hugely negative response online. There's always going to be a handful of people who pop up going, horror is subjective, horror movies always get bad rap. Make your own decisions, but even a lot of people in the horror communities are like, oh, this is kind of a mess, this is kind of a disaster. And I saw you gave it a 0.5 star on Letterboxd, and so I was like, man,
which is the equivalent of a 1 out of 10.
Yes, which it's the lowest you can give. So I was like, man, Melvin really has strong feelings about this. So I sat down. I initially wanted to also watch Leatherface before I watched this one, so I get like a feel for recent, but it wasn't streaming anywhere, so I just watched this one. But Melvin, why did you want to do an episode on this so bad? Or is that the cart before the horse? Should we?
I don't know. I mean, I didn't. This is a movie where, like, as I finished it, I didn't like to give a spark notes. I didn't like it, and then as I'm writing my Letterboxd review, I'm like, oh man, I really don't like this one. I think I hate this one. And like I keep writing, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm saying mean things about people who like this movie. Not that there's many. And like I'm like saying things about not necessarily calling anybody out who made it. Elsie Fisher is innocent, but like I was like, man, I really don't like this. And then I also saw like comparatively on Letterboxd, Texas Chainsaw Massacre has, I'm going to open this up, has 54,000 logs. And I think Uncharted, which is in theaters, has something like 41,000, which is a pretty big disparity of logging, which at least for the Letterboxd community shows the more Letterboxd is probably a bit more, I don't know, less committee oriented in terms of movies. I don't know. I don't know how you would understand the metrics in general audiences.
Well, this is a movie that's going to probably also provoke more actual responses of people than Uncharted, which is just
absolutely. But Uncharted is connected to a franchise that, yeah, I guess the fourth one came out like 6 years ago or something. But it's still a loved franchise. So to even notice that like the movie that is getting significantly worse reviews than Uncharted, although Uncharted is obviously not doing super well, getting more watches probably because people are saying it's bad. I mean, I'll say it out the gate. Don't watch this movie. We're talking about it because it's interesting, but I don't recommend watching this movie. Yeah, I just wanted to talk about it because I thought that'll be kind of interesting to I just miss podcasting for one, but also it has plenty to talk about because of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yeah, I love the first movie. I even brought my Steelbook over to show it to Dan. I also brought over my Nika figure that I got of Bubba to show it to Dan, and I'm wearing my Texas Chainsaw t-shirt.
Is this going to be what Dan. This is for the next 40 minutes?
And here's the water bottle that was in the set of the movie back in 19...
You have like a chop top plushie. and
Here is an actual dead body from the movie because it was a documentary based on real events. Har, har, har. No, I also love the movie, but I guess I would be in agreement with what you said, where it's like, I don't know if I have franchise loyalty because I've only seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Tobe Hooper's 1974, and then Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which does the reverse requel thing where instead of putting the in the beginning.
Wait, this is you've only seen these two?
These two. I've only seen these two. Okay. So very interesting to
I've seen more than that. So
I've been reading a lot about them, and I read that the 2003 remake is supposed to be really great. Not great, but like good.
Yes, great, strong.
Yeah,
it's
good. Good in the franchise, obviously not as good as the first or even Tobe Hooper's second, which is wildly different to the first movie, but good in response to like, because the first movie, a lot of people look at it as this perspective of like, it's 1974, but postmodern chaos of like unreliability in the world, and that like, I don't know,
the meat packing industry.
There's a lot that we'll probably get into. But then the 2003 remake had a more hopeful perspective as a theme, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, it's also definitely one of the better of the Platinum Dunes Michael Bay horror remakes that came out around the same time. That was also the era where we got the Friday the 13th remake. We also got the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. And so of those is better. It's also really benefits from R. Lee Ermey being in the movie. And it was successful enough where it got its own sequel.
Right. Yeah, it's its own canon and stuff.
Texas Chainsaw is like interesting because also like the second film of the franchise is almost straight up horror comedy. Like the poster is famously a parody of The Breakfast Club.
The family photo. It's awesome. I love that poster.
Then subsequent ones get more into different, all of them. There's two interesting things about them. First, they all have to take different angles. Some even go harder into the cross-dressing angle where like you see think about Leatherface's identity. The fourth one is the big screen acting debut of both Renee Zellweger and Matthew McConaughey, who are just going insane. And the movie's almost worth watching just for that alone. Joe Bob Briggs famously is a huge proponent of the movie. But all of them also have a lot of input from, what's their name? They're a producer on this. Kim Henkel, who is a producer on this one as well. He has been consistently producer on most most Texas Chainsaw Massacre films. So this got his stamp of approval, as well as Texas Chainsaw 3D and Leatherface and Texas Chainsaw 3 and 4. So I don't know what his feelings are on this franchise. He doesn't really do much outside of the Texas Chainsaw franchise. He has some early credits.
Maybe he just has the license somehow.
Maybe.
I also see a producer credit for an Ian Henkel. So I wonder if
it's a family affair.
Maybe even a child. And Kim was just like, yeah, go make your own, son, or something like that.
To be fair, Kim Henkel isn't just like a hanger on. He was like an actual like writer on the original Texas Chainsaw. He also worked with Tobe Hooper on a few of his earlier horror films as well. But post Texas Chainsaw, he hasn't really done much. So he also was a producer on like found footage horror film from 2016. But yeah, so This movie specifically came about because the Leatherface prequel took so long to come out that the company that had the rights to make 5 Texas Chainsaw films lost the rights. They reverted back to someone else. And so I don't know how to say his name. Fede Alvarez? Is that how you pronounce his name?
Yeah, Fede. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I'd say Fede Alvarez. Yeah, he of course made Don't Breathe, and he also did the Evil Dead 2013 remake.
/ not a remake.
Yeah, I don't know what canon it's supposed to be because it's always been talked about being maybe beside the canon. Now it's in the canon, and there's going to be Evil Dead Rise, and there might be a cross. I don't know.
Which he's not even like really involved in Evil Dead Rise either, too, which is interesting.
I don't think so, but yeah, he did Evil Dead 2013, which at the time I saw twice in theaters. I enjoyed. I
really
also
like that movie.
Yeah, it's insane, and it has like different parts where it's like a paranormal horror, then it's like an at-home slasher horror, and then it just becomes like an action movie for the last 10 minutes. It's awesome, and it's Raining Blood. It's so cool.
And it's still one of the big missed opportunities. They didn't play Raining Blood by Slayer at that exact moment. That would have been like the perfect...
And they could have. Like, why not?
One of my favorite theater experiences, too.
Especially because that movie turns into just an action fest. So, like,
yeah.
it would have fit. But he definitely... as an artist, as a content creator, people will recognize about him that he likes to push boundaries, and he's very visually transgressive. We're mentioning Evil Dead 2013 because it's memorable because of its practical gore effects.
Yes.
And boy, is it visually striking. And I do remember reading that it actually was like, which isn't necessarily a good thing. And I think as a moral question in terms of content creation, puts even the film into question, but the actors had like horrible stress dreams and nightmares because of the practical effects. That also could be totally fake and was part of their marketing, but so who knows? Either way, the movie is technically good. And Don't Breathe is also like, has its own... I don't even want to spoil anything from Don't Breathe because
Don't Breathe is quite a ride.
You have no idea where it's going to go.
But like both of those movies, but I think those are both really effective horror movies. They're both movies I really enjoyed. They do have like a nastiness to them, but there's something else going on. There's characters. There's a sense that there's a perspective the movie has.
There's creativity. They're really like, because like Don't Breathe has a lot of, I think, creativity. The narrative itself, as it structurally moves through each, I guess you could say level, because it's essentially like a video game with different levels and information. Part of the artistry of the film is that, like, I really don't think you can guess where it's going to go.
No.
And so, especially to the degree it goes.
Another great theater experience, let me tell you.
I wish I was in theater when that happened.
Oh my gosh.
It would have been just, I would have loved to hear a packed theater just freak out.
Oh, they were not ready. They were already, like, the movie is already pretty effective, intense, and there are some kind of shocking moments. And then when the movie gets more into it, my theater was just like, oh no. Like, no.
My eyes were wide. I think my mouth dropped. I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening? That transgression and shock definitely comes into Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which we'll talk about as we get into it. But you can't talk about it without talking about Fede Alvarez, because he definitely, as a producer, I think he was involved with a lot of what makes this movie not really work.
I don't know. Like he has a story credit, but so much about what makes the other two films we're talking about memorable. I didn't see his third film, but so much of what makes it memorable is like, yeah, like, okay, there's a lot of nastiness. It's very transgressive, but there's a sense that like he's getting at some sort of point. Like Don't Breathe,
or he's having fun,
or
like
he's having fun.
Both of them are fun.
Yes, they both are a lot of fun. I don't want to pretend like they're not, but they also like. You get a sense that like the characters are kind of like terrible people, but like I like that both movies, specifically Jane Levy, who's an actor in both, her character goes on a progression. She has an arc. Like there's something I really like the ending of the 2013 Evil Dead, because it completes the arc of like at the beginning of the film. The whole premise of that movie is she's going through withdrawals. They're trying to help her like kick drug addiction, and so it's like the demons and creatures in that movie almost work as a personification of her inner demons. Like not the most deep thing in the world, but it really works in that way.
But it works enough to make what is happening on the screen
something
endurable.
Yes,
and enjoyable. Because I think Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts about Texas Chainsaw, and I think all of this is really helpful to color that movie. So, but keep going.
And Don't Breathe gets a little more in the moral ambiguity, because the premise of the movie is a group of people breaking into someone's house. So they assume it'll be an easy mark to rob because he's a blind veteran. But surprise, surprise, it's Stephen Lang, who's just an absolute tank of a person. And then there's a change in the middle of the movie. But again, Jane Levy is seen almost as like a morally troubled character, but she seems more dragged along. And so, yeah, you empathize with her, and it's revealed. And I have mixed feelings about the reveal midway through the movie, but it does color what's happening in a different way. Where, again, there is at least a basic good versus evil. There is a sympathetic protagonist versus a clearly not good antagonist. And a key thing is that throughout both these movies, the death that appears on screen is either A, characters who quote unquote deserve it because they've committed some sort of moral sin, or B, they're framed as not good things that are happening. Where like all of the characters who die in the Evil Dead movie, for example, are either literal like demons from hell, or they are portrayed as people who are victims of what's happening. And while
they're like possessed by by the Deadites, and
you can't. I'm not gonna pretend like it's not cool. Like gore effects aren't cool, but like the movie doesn't frame it as like things that you're supposed to be happy are happening. Which all of this is to lead up into. There is a huge. My take. I didn't have as strong a reaction to Texas Chainsaw, but I was just sort of mystified at it because it doesn't do. I was so unclear on how I was supposed to feel about anything that happened in the movie, where I couldn't tell if I was supposed to empathize with Leatherface or think he was a villain. I couldn't tell if the movie wanted me to rejoice that a bunch of people get killed, but like all the people that get killed, none of them are really presented as like victims who like. They're not like the sexually promiscuous teenagers in a Friday the 13th movie where the movie's punishing them for acting out sexuality. They're just people who are there. And the movie's presenting their murder as it's supposed to be the moment where I cheer and go, yeah, this is sick. But like none of the characters I felt like really deserved to get murdered horribly. But then the movie kind of tries to kind of present them as bad, but then it doesn't want to commit fully. It really felt like Fede Alvarez presented a pitch. Like I don't know anything about the production movie, but he's like, oh, what if a bunch of influencers got killed by Leatherface? And then they're like, oh, that's kind of an interesting idea. And then someone realized like, oh, we're kind of getting into some weird moral stuff. This is the South. There we have characters who aren't white. Well, and so it seemed like they kind of waffled on their own premise. And you get this weird sludge of a movie where it's just kind of miserable, where like everyone in the movie is terrible, but not terrible enough where I was happy they're dead, nor really redeemable enough where I was really rooting for them either. It was just kind of like a miserable exercise in watching a really half-hearted movie where all of the credits in the movie, I tried to look up who the director is. He has one other credit. The writer in the movie doesn't really have any credits either. It seems like the movie just got passed off to people who were just willing to work on the project. It just is lacking in any sort of like vision or personality. It's very weird. Like it's just a really weird movie to watch.
Well, I guess that's where I will introduce the movie.
Yeah. So all I have to say, well, so I also don't recommend the movie off the top. It's just,
just listen to us talk about it. That's kind of it.
If you really want some gore, I'm sure someone will make a supercut
if you really want some fun gore, I'll recommend movies to you that are actually
watch
fun.
The other two movies we spent like more time talking about because they're more interesting.
They're way more interesting and fun. Hey there, it's your friendly neighborhood call to action. Just checking in on you. Hope you're doing all right. I'm just stopping by to say, if you enjoy the show, you can always subscribe and write a review for Cinematic Doctrine. There's iTunes, Podchaser, basically anywhere you listen. You can give us a shout out with a thumbs up, 5 stars, gripping positivity. Or if you hate the show, you can say that too.
Wait, what? What are you saying? Why are you saying that?
Well, I'm not going to tell them what to do, Ted. They're free to do what they want. Our analytics say we got a lot of listeners in the US, and they love their freedoms. And you're also free to check out our Twitter. Very active there. We host polls, memes. There's also the Cinematic Doctrine Facebook group called Cinematic Doctrine Facebook Group. If you want to join, just answer the questions, read the rules, and tell them the podcast sent you. Also, you should check out our website. Some really cool stuff there. Editorials, written reviews for movies we haven't had time to cover. Always check out cinematicdoctrine.com when you get the chance. Oh, Ted also told me I shouldn't forget to mention the Patreon. Something about you can support us or something? Wait, Ted, I thought this was like a hobby thing. You want me to
expand cinematic doctrine. You know
Right,
this already.
right. Yeah, I forgot. I'm the one who put all this together. Yeah, Cinematic Doctrine has a Patreon. For as little as $3 a month, you can gain access to early uncut episodes of the podcast. Oh, and did I mention you get to tell us what to do? That's right. Each month you get to vote on a movie we discuss on the show. Anyways, I gotta run. So, I'll see you guys later. So, okay, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Face of Madness returns. That's right. It's been 3 years since Hellboy 2019 made me mad about movies. The cycle has ended. The Trinity is here, and now Texas Chainsaw makes me mad too. Sarah Yarkin, Elsie Fisher, and Bo Burnham's brother Mark Burnham, that's his name, star as an influencer, a Hot Topic customer, and Leatherpants McSqueezy, respectively. There's nothing else about the story. That's the movie. It's morally bankrupt. Let's talk about it. Okay. I honestly would not be as bothered by this movie and giving it a 1 out of 10 if and we've been coloring this whole discussion about it, but if the violence and gore wasn't so obtuse and celebratory, because I have watched some of the most gory movies I've seen ever my entire life this year. I watched PG Psycho Goreman, which was a blast, except for one scene that wasn't even gory. It was just offensive. But the rest of it was great and super gory. And that's the least gory of the three I'm going to mention. Then I watched Frankenstein's Army, which is a found footage World War II Soviet movie where a bunch of cosplayers got to dress up as Nazi zombie robot monsters. And that was insane. And then I watched Dead Alive, which gets a joy and celebration from Steven and Dan respectively, because I will never see a movie more violent or gory than Dead Alive.
It's a masterpiece.
It's so awesome. It is so good.
Peter Jackson's masterpiece.
It is just a filmmaking masterpiece, because it's every single scene in that movie emphasizes talent and creativity on a degree that I like. I mean, it is the only scene that audibly got my wife and I to both go, gross, like, ew, like at the exact same moment within 20 minutes of the movie, and then also laugh at the same time.
We're 20 minutes in this recording, and we, for the life of us, cannot focus on talking about this Texas Chainsaw movie.
Those movies, none of Texas Chainsaw Massacre doesn't have nearly as much violence or gore as any one of those movies.
No.
And yet, this movie's violence and gore actually made me upset. I felt sick. And then by the rest of the movie, like, I just wasn't really into it anymore. And then like the ending has like the gotcha moment with the slasher movie where someone gets killed. And like, I really didn't want to see that, because I was like, I don't like what you're doing anymore.
It was the opposite of setting the audience home happy.
Yeah, which is like, that is what you do. You're like, oh, the top of the car is Jason. The top of the car is Freddy's sweater. You got, oh no, they're dreaming again. Like, that's great. And you go home and you have a good time, because that's what movies are about. And this one is just miserable and happy. And like, it's frustrating because I think the movie starts out strong. And I don't mean the movie itself narratively. I just mean like, when the movie's opening, the soundtrack is really, really good. And
John Larroquette's back as the narrator.
It has such a good tone to how it's like feeling. And then I even liked how it sort of just opens up with, I liked the opening title screen and how they did it. With it being like a documentary that's talking about the old movie, which is clever. And then they're, of course, saying it's called Texas Chainsaw, but in the TV, in the movie. So cool. All that's great. And I thought that was fine. And then even visually, like, I actually wrote down a list of things I liked. And I guess you could say there's a lot, but I'm just being nice. But like, I thought visually the movie looked okay. I liked some of the shots and I thought they were pretty creative. I saw on Letterboxd that David Blue Garcia, the director for this film, did another one. I'm not going to get this name right. Tajano. And people were saying the story is pretty lame, but the film looks visually stunning. So I'm sure he carried that over into this one. No, I know it because it looks good. And I liked a lot of the Hollywood-esque nature of it, which is always funny to say talking about a Netflix movie. But this wasn't a Netflix movie. The movie was looking for distribution, and then Netflix just bought
the
it.
test screenings for this movie were so negative that they decided to
I
send it
could
to
not
Netflix.
confirm that. I intended to do it, but I did not have time.
Well,
we are
that is-
really squeezing this episode in terms of timing.
So, okay, the internet rumblings are that the test screenings were so bad
Right.
they had to send it to Netflix.
Right, exactly. And but the visual profile of the movie looks good. I don't know if it was shot on film or digital, but they definitely did editing to make it look like it was on film, especially for some outside scenes. The sky looked beautiful. I like that the location that they go to is just like a set. Like it just looks like an old town Western set. The movie shot in, I think, Bulgaria. So even you could, I don't know. It's just, it looks good there too, because it has a Hollywood vibe. It rains at one point in the movie, which is always cool to me in terms of filming, because it's either you got good timing or like you brought in machines to do some movie magic. And I guess if we're talking about things I liked, Elsie Fisher is fun to watch on screen. This is her second horror movie after 8th grade, so that's great. And
she's doing a lot of horror stuff. She's in an upcoming Exorcist type movie, and she was in Castle Rock. I don't know why she's such.
Cool.
So
I did not know that. And apparently, is this a movie about the Shags? She's in a movie about the Shags. What the heck?
That's cool.
From Ken Kwapis, who directed a lot of episodes of The Office. So I guess it's going to be a comedy movie. This will be great. Anyways, well, actually, it'll probably also be a horror movie if anyone's heard the album, which is actually kind of interesting to listen to. Anyways, Texas Chainsaw, that's what this episode's about. I liked the first kill. That got a good out of me.
The old lady dying?
No, that wasn't a kill. That was just an old lady dying. A character thinks they killed them, and I was like, no, you didn't, but okay. Or maybe that's a gray area. Who cares? No, Leatherface. A man tries to comfort Leatherface.
We should probably explain what the premise of the movie is.
Well, let me get through my list, because the
Okay.
premise is part of what makes this movie bad.
Okay.
but it's ridiculous. But the first kill is great because Leatherface basically breaks somebody's hand and their bones are sticking out, and then he proceeds to use the hand with bones sticking out still attached to the guy to stab into his neck, which is so stupid that I was like, yeah, this is great. And that's the last time I'll enjoy what's happening on screen. But I did have another sequence where I held my breath with a character who was hiding from Leatherface, so I guess that was effective to me. Everything else I disliked. Do you want to explain the story of this movie or
Okay.
the semblance of a narrative? Because it is.
So,
I don't know if I've seen something dumber than this.
It felt like somebody. There's an initial basic pitch of a Texas Chainsaw sequel in here that could totally worked, which is group of people go back to Old Town from Texas Chainsaw. Leatherface is there. And that's really all you need for a premise for a Texas Chainsaw movie. But it looks like somebody said, no, it needs to be more modern. So someone looked up the hashtag woke on Twitter, and based on that, they cobbled together a premise. And that is a internet famous chef, ? And his friend that they do YouTube / internet TikTok videos with have decided to buy up all of the old real estate in the town that the original Texas Chainsaw took place in, as far as I can tell. And so they're going there and they're going to auction off the property to other, what I assume are influencers and figures, because there's later a scene where there's a party and people are using their phones, which is movie shorthand for these are terrible people, I guess. However, the group that has gone there, which is Jacob Lattimore, who is actually in stuff. I don't know why he agreed to be in this movie. He is the titular chef. He has a friend who is played by Sarah Yarkin, whose sister, played by Elsie Fisher, is a school shooting survivor, which you get because while scrolling through Instagram, she has a post of a gun with a circle and a line through it. So you know she's against guns. And Jacob Lattimore also has a wife who I literally did not know was with them, because there's an earlier scene where they're all together and she's just not in frame. You don't realize she's in the movie
for a long time.
It's very weird. I, for a second, thought they like, oh, did I just miss that character? Did she get recast during the middle of this movie? But no, so they go, and there is a townsman who is a younger person who is a mechanic, who is their sort of contact, who they literally get off on a wrong foot of because he has a gun on him, and the movie decides to both ridicule him for having a gun and ridicule the person for ridiculing him for having a gun. Again, I'm not really sure what position the movie is taking on these issues. The movie doesn't seem to know because it frames this as both a good and bad thing. Whatever.
There is a genuine part where it sounds like the movie is actually like pro Confederate flag, because the way they shoot Leatherface, the way the film seems to sort of like Leatherface and what he's doing in response to what's going on makes it seem like they're like pro Southern madness and racism, but it's really weird.
It's weird because it's yes, because again, it feels like they wanted to take a point of view, but then somebody wisely realized that taking either side of their own premise they've set up is a bad idea.
And okay, the first film has no characters. There are no characters, which is part of why a lot of the stuff I felt like didn't work in this is because they're trying to use characters. And they're trying to make Leatherface a character of some kind, like a killer. But Leatherface, even in the first film, isn't really like the main...
He's not. And that's a problem with these movies, is everyone keeps thinking that Leatherface is like a Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers. He's not. He works best as part of an ensemble where he's semi-sympathetic.
It's a family of cannibals. That's the point.
Chop Top. The old man who's dead but not dead.
That's so scary. Yeah, I love it.
It's he is a tool in the hand of other more evil people, which is partially why he sometimes works as a pseudo anti-hero.
And it's why he's great as a sympathetic villain.
Yes.
Like I really strangely emotionally on all levels except physical, I am the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I really connect with this movie to the point that like in this film, when Leatherface kills people and gets back home and he's mourning the death of his surrogate mom, like I was getting emotional about it because I like what he portrays as a character in the first film, because the first film is not really a character movie. It's about theme and emotion and feeling.
Well, there are characters, but they're very exaggerated.
They're exaggerated to the point of the film that's being made clear.
Yeah.
So that even though they're all cannibals, they're not really, they're hyperbolized of what they're trying to represent for what Tobe Hooper is representing. So it makes me emotionally connect with the family. Like in the first film, it's a group of kids going to wherever. They're visiting like an old home that was in their family. But one of the guys in the van is in a wheelchair. And the film makes a very clear distinction between how the friends treat their friend in a wheelchair, with this really painfully sad sequence where he's trying to get up steps in his wheelchair and all of his friends are just in the house away, like not even within distance of him to be like, hey, could you help? And then at the end of the film later, when they're in the crazy cannibal house, Leatherface and his brother carefully carry their like dead but not dead grandpa, who is chair bound, down the stairs gently. And it's just this amazing contrast of weirdness and family dynamics and human value, or really the value of life, because I think that's what this movie is about too, which I understand for non-horror fans is like, what are you talking about? But for horror fans, it's like, yes, that makes total sense. It's just, he's not a character. He's a part of a point and a purpose that's being made clear through this borderline art house, elevated horror, before elevated horror was a thing kind of character, which is why also Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 Netflix edition is bad, because where the first movie has this value of life, this movie has no value of life, or there's nothing sacred about what's happening on screen and who it's happening to.
Right.
And that's part of also why it's so upsetting to me when I'm like watching so many people be horribly murdered by this monster, who is also way too smart.
Yeah,
I don't know why he was so smart in this movie when
he
even in
sets
just
traps.
the first one, like he's not that smart.
Well, to get to what is essentially the catalyst for all the movie's events,
and probably the part of the movie that kills it dead, because it's mostly bearable as a misguided slasher movie, which are most slasher movies that never hit a point of offensiveness. But this one, like, there's just one scene.
There's a specific point I want to make in a second, but it's so as they're looking at this town, they've bought up all the real estate in. They notice that one of the houses has a Confederate flag on them, and they're like, "We gotta get rid of that because that might discourage people from purchasing the real estate." Which makes zero sense, because nobody's going to go to an abandoned town in Texas going to be shocked when they see normal Southern iconography. That's stupid. Yeah. It seems like the movie is attempting to say something, but is neither sure what it wants to say or why it wants to say them in the first place. But so they go in their home, and it just so happens this is an old orphanage where the old woman who runs the orphanage is still there. And so she's very nice to them. She offers them sweet tea. She potentially is just old and therefore slightly racist. Again, the movie isn't sure what kind of point it wants to make, but they basically force her out of her home. They call the cops because they insist that, like, they've bought the house. She's like, no, I settled it with a bank. I still own the house. But clearly there's one boy left at the orphanage, and it's very obviously Leatherface, who at this point is probably in his 60s or 70s.
I think people said he's like 70. He should be, even though in the film he looks like he's 40.
Which is a huge continuity problem, but whatever. And it gets into what I call the Michael Myers problem, which is it gets to a point where this character has to be supernatural, or else nothing that's happening makes any sort of sense.
Right.
But they force her out of her home, and the stress of forcing her out of her home causes her to die. And so the Melody character, who is Elsie Fisher's sister, feels very bad about what's happening. Dante, played by Jacob Lattimore, appears to be more mixed on it because he's very focused on the fact they're selling the sale. And then a van of what the producers saw when they Google image searched TikTok influencer of those people to show up, and they start auctioning off the town. And then this leads to the scene that you were talking about, where we have the first kill, and Jacob Lattimore's wife is there. And there's actually a pretty decent scene where it
looks visually good.
Yeah.
Are you talking about where he's cutting off the face of his mom?
He's cutting off the face of his mom to put on as a mask because that's what he does. And Jacob's wife is in the car, and she's trying to radio for help without alerting him. And it's a well-framed shot where you just see the passenger side see the car, and off to the background you see him doing it. And occasionally he moves, you'll see him look over to see what the noise was. And so that's okay. But if it sounds like the movie has sort of mixed motives and themes, that's, to me, is the huge major problem of the movie. Because, again, if the movie had a clear setup of ignorant people going to a culture they don't understand and then paying for it. That's a common horror thing that's been going on for forever and ever. That's basically what Cannibal Holocaust is about. Like, this is a horror thing. But the movie also doesn't know if it likes the culture that is being quote unquote invaded either. And this is sort of also summed up in the whole gun thing, because there's a scene where Elsie Fisher's character is actually sharing her trauma of being in a school, getting shot in a school shooting, which at first I'm like, hey, that's kind of interesting parallel, right? They kind of do this in Halloween, the new one, where slasher people killing people is like this universe's version of school shootings that happens so often. And then I
like to imagine these slashers all live in the same universe.
Yeah.
It's you got away from Bubba, don't go to sleep. We might get ready.
Yeah. You don't want to get Babaduked. Don't pick up any books you find, Yeah. Don't mess with puzzle boxes or whatever.
And Lin Shaye from Insidious comes to help you out.
And, dude, the people from the Conjuring movies would never run out of work, right? They just keep investigating things. Also Patrick Wilson. And there's this, and so from word go, there's gonna be a scene where she uses a gun to defend herself, and because she's overcoming her fear. But the movie also frames guns as kind of awesome, so I'm not sure what they're saying about this. So it's just a mixed mess of things. And so when you get into the actual nitty gritty, Leatherface has got to kill people. It's like the movie is trying to almost frame it as when there's that now infamous bus scene where he shows up on the bus and they start videotaping him with their phones. And they're saying like, "Oh, we're gonna cancel you, bro," and he murders them. And the movie's like, "Ha ha ha! Isn't it great? Some people getting murdered because they are aware of the concept of canceling. Therefore, they deserve to get murdered." And it's just like, what? Like, why is this happening? And why is it being framed as a cool, fun gore fest scene when a bunch of innocent people are being murdered for no reason? It's weird.
Especially when like the way it's framing everything is so focused on like the misery of these people not being smart enough to just, oh, he's chainsawing one person. Let me go out the front door and just leave. There's like a real sense of hopelessness to what's taking place. And this is where like you and I both, as people who like gore movies and cheered in Malignant when a bunch of really sad women get crushed by the Malignant monster. Like I think this is, I've been trying to think about like, I've been really, really thinking about a lot. Like, okay, what is it that upsets me so much about this? Because I was even like, man, I loved Invincible, and the Invincible even has a sequence that's upsetting. And I know like the train sequence in Invincible, it sounds like has literally traumatized everybody. Like everybody I know who's seen that felt ill.
It's memorable, man.
But then that sequence has the decency to end, and not just end, but like the point of all of it is like this value of human life and fighting for it. And yeah, okay, Invincible never quite gets to why, but he feels that people matter, and that's what makes it beautiful, that he endures so much of what's happening. And gore as a narrative choice in filmmaking requires that sense of purpose. Otherwise, it's just mean-spirited. That's why I think when I was writing my review for this, I was getting really mean. I was like, this is the kind of film, I think I have a sentence that's like, this is the kind of film that only school shooters would like, which is ironic because it's about one of the subplots. And it's because it has this like, you would have to enjoy basically violence against random people, especially to the degree that it is, to enjoy like the movie, if that makes any sense. Because it's just very, very visceral. It's very chaotic. I think it's performed well as everybody's reacting to what's happening, which makes it more traumatic. And it's just the worst. It's just the worst. And I really feel like it just ends the movie right there. We're like, okay, cool. The two characters escape at some point. But then like, I still got to sit through another 20 minutes and it doesn't get any better. It arguably gets worse, but not because it's more gory. It just gets worse. And it's really, really strange and demands that we talk about it on a podcast.
Yeah, it's strange. Yeah, the thing is like everything that happens in a movie.
It's still upsetting to me. I just want to make that clear. I went to bed. I didn't have a nightmare, but we kept thinking about the scene and like the imagery of it. And so I had a dream about it. So that was annoying. And I even woke up and told Kat about it.
You're very affected by movies.
I was very frustrated about it, especially because like if I could write a dissertation on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1974, what makes it so wonderful is how much life matters to Tobe Hooper. And that's why the movie is so effective, because he's constantly contrasting it both in a narrative and like metaphysical sense to the visuals that are happening on screen. And he's also having a fun time with it too, because it's an exhausting film where a girl runs away from a chainsaw wielding man for like 15 minutes. That's exhausting. You go on an elliptical for 15 minutes and you're not even running as fast as she was. And it's amazing that she does that. And then this movie comes out and it's like, let's just murder. Like, well, it's just terrible.
Everything that happens in the movie happens in a particular context. And what bothers me, I don't know about it, but what doesn't work for me, I'll say, is that, again, like the violence in this movie takes place in such a weird context where I'm not clear on who, because the movie frames Leatherface as a almost sympathetic character for zero reason. And because later it's revealed in the movie that his mom, or the woman who's acting as his mother, does have the deed to the house. She was wrongly evicted from her home. And so her death is completely needless. And that's what sets him off and makes him go back to his old ways, like that Bugs Bunny meme with the gun.
That's what makes him incredibly brilliant and smart. Like, because apparently that's a thing now. Yeah.
And And so, like, okay, like, so is he a sympathetic character and therefore justifying what's happening? Well, no, both from a basic logic standpoint that there's no event in your life that justifies chainsaw murdering like 30 people.
And
but also,
it's
like,
not even in movie logic, is it?
yeah,
Is
no,
it
yeah,
bearable? Because like in *Malignant*, in the beginning, when the boyfriend or husband is killed because he's an abuser, in movie logic, you're like, well, he deserved it. Not
yes.
real life logic, but in movie logic, it works. But in this, there's not even movie logic to give me the comfortability to watch it happen.
No, because in movie logic, only like one or two of the initial characters are quote unquote guilty for what's happened, because it's a misunderstanding, and B, multiple characters show that they do not like what has happened and they disagree with this decision. Specifically, our de facto main character, played by Elsie Fisher, who wasn't even there for that event. So, okay, or any of the people who have come to buy land, they're just there. And so, like, but the movie also wants to frame it as almost justifying they'll get murdered because they're dumb teenagers, and I guess the movie's written by old people or something. But yeah, like in theory, a purely nihilistic movie that's just an exercise in misery. It's not for me, but there's certainly an industry for that. There's a time and a place for that. There's something to be said for just like, exploring more nihilistic themes in a movie. But this movie waffles on that. It also wants you to feel bad for Leatherface. It also wants you to also not want the people to get murdered. It's a movie lacking in a viewpoint on any of the events that's happening in front of you, which makes it completely lifeless in any regard for anything. And I want to point out, early in the movie, it's established that the sisters, their grandmother used to own a home in the area. Like, that's a thing that's established. They have a good rapport with the cops because of that.
Do you think it's like from an old right then? Like, this is stuff that was left over in rewrites. Like, so maybe there was supposed to be an implication that they're related to the woman.
Well, my thing is, you don't need all this other dumb plot stuff. You could just have it where they got a deed to their grandma's house, and so they and their friends went to go investigate it. Why have all this stuff with TikTok influencers and stuff? Why this hashtag take that woke snowflakes like murder scene? Why any of this? You could have had this exact same movie play out in a less mean-spirited, more focused way where, okay, it's not reinventing the wheel, but you could just have Leatherface is upset at people because they're in his home, therefore he wants to kill them, they get away, the end. Instead of this really...
Isn't that the plot of one of the other ones? I think I read the description as like this family inherits a house, but then someone in the basement is
Leatherface
still there, and it's just Leatherface.
It's just I like to think it's just a lineup of slashers, and they're just like, all right, which they'll draw straws.
Who's in the basement?
Well, I don't know, the trooper. I guess it's your turn to kill him, or the guy with the gas mask from My Bloody Valentine.
Yeah,
because there's a whole industry of movies like this where they're dumb, they're pointless, they're dead teenager movies, as Roger Ebert used to like to say, and they have a place. But like those movies, the reason they don't go down so like bitterly is because you don't get a sense that like the writers seem to have a
active hatred,
actual glee for who Leatherface is killing, nor do they have a self-satisfied thing of, yeah, but who's the real villain? You can just feel them like take their head. Who killed whose surrogate grandma now? It's just, which makes the whole thing just kind of stink.
It's funny because like when I think of Friday the 13th movies, sans 6, because 6 is an actual movie and I love 6. But like the other movies are just nonsense. There's like nothing happening. Frankly, the first one borders on mumblecore, where it's just teens get together and then they have sex and then someone kills them. And that's it. And you barely hear what's being talked about, and there's no plot line.
And you don't care that they're dead because they never even barely got lines. So they're just just a mannequin that got stabbed. Which is
frankly why that movie's not very good. I don't think so, at least. But like when you keep watching them, like I think 2 is arguably more interesting than 1 and more fun. And it has some of the dumbest kills, like a guy in a wheelchair getting a hatchet in his face. It's like got me and my wife to just lose it with laughter, because the movie itself is sort of just fun and silly, but it's also not trying to hurt me. Like, I think that's something about like visuals is really important here too, because sometimes, well, just violence is painful to watch. If you've ever seen people get into a fight, it like makes you visibly upset, and movies are magical because it's transporting you to another time. So seeing violence against people happens in movies because it's shocking, and the intensity of that can be more shocking. And if you're trying to have a fun slasher, a knife is all you need. That's why Scream is fun. I've said a lot this year because I watched a lot of Scream this year. Wow, all I need is a good stabbing, and I'm really happy about this movie. Like that's it. And the newest Scream movie has plenty of good stabbing. But then, yeah, if you're trying to have fun, then you have to be selective about what you're putting on screen, which is a bit more about like visual storytelling than I think what you're talking about, which is like what's really bothersome is if there's no context for what's happening,
or
then it's just bothersome to see it anyway.
or it's just a bad context. Because I think kind of what this movie has done is it enters this weird uncanny valley where the characters are written enough where they feel like people, so I don't want them to die, but not written enough where I understand who they are.
Yeah, I didn't want
to cheer
like
for
Sarah
them.
Yarkin to die at the end.
No, I didn't want any, like, I didn't want the sisters to die. Like they're and here's to show this like how weird this movie is. There's a massive plot point that we haven't even mentioned at all, which is God rest her soul, the original actress no longer with us, but the original survivor,
yes.
Sally hardest whatever, yeah, Sally, she's back, baby. And they do the whole, this movie really feels like somebody said, man, Halloween 2018 was very successful and now we have a slasher franchise, so they do the exact same thing where Sally, the original last girl, has been hunting Leatherface for decades and is waiting for the chance to kill him, and they bring her back in the movie just to ruin her character horribly. I cannot believe what they did to this barely a character that they somehow ruined her, where she shows up. She's actually not in a lot of the movie. And initially, the girls escape Leatherface and she just locks them in her car because Leatherface is chasing them. So he's like, no, he wants you. You gotta stay here. It's just like, what, Sally? Why are you crazy now?
No, I thought it was implied that she was going to use them as bait. Like,
yes,
he'll come to me. So then, but then she just goes to him anyway.
Yeah. So why
he's just sitting on like a couch, and then he selectively chooses not to kill her.
It makes no sense.
And I'm like, why? Like, you clearly don't care about anything. Just it was really weird.
And she doesn't shoot him like point blank in the face for some reason. She's like, I want you to. Do you remember me? Do you remember me? And he doesn't say anything because he's Leatherface. He just walks away because he's never been a man of eloquent words. And so then he goes, and then she shoots him later. So why did you wait? It's nonsense. And it's like, why is Sally a crazy person now? And then she tries to fight Leatherface, and Leatherface freaking murders her horribly.
She just loses.
It's like the big scene, and she like tries to hit him, and he does the thing where he gets a chainsaw in her and lifts her in the air, which doesn't kill her because later she shoots Leatherface again.
She shoots him again. I'm sorry. And then he like vanishes, but you hear him revving the chainsaw, and Catherine goes, "Is this Dead by Daylight?" Because that's what happens in Dead by Daylight when he's whenever you're playing Bubba or you're playing against him, you'll hear the chainsaw revving because he's chasing somebody down. And so we were like, we're expecting someone to
call
scream
out
because the character went
fans down. Yeah,
but it was just like. It's just a disaster. Everything's wrong.
It goes from a movie that I ideologically have trouble with to a movie that just stops being like even like a functioning like movie with a plot by the end. Or I'm just like, why is anyone doing anything?
It's the kind of movie that was pitched on the bus scene, and now that it's over,
Leatherface could kill a bunch of those annoying TikTok kids, you know?
Yeah. And then it moves on.
The one detail I liked in that scene is that when Leatherface is killing someone comments on their live video, I guess it's Instagram Live, looks fake. And I was like, someone would probably say that if they shot actual chainsaw murder from a guy just like Leatherface.
Yeah. Especially with the blue light. You use the blue light so you could hide the graphics, the bad graphics. That's why you did it.
I'm not going to pretend like the gore effects are not impressive and some of the kills aren't visually like enjoyable in a sense that I'm always a sucker for they didn't just do the CGI blood effects or whatever, but again, like there's actually very little creativity in the kills for the most part. That initial kill with the cop was interesting. I like the set piece where the girl's under the floorboards and Leatherface is just like chasing her with a chainsaw.
That was when I was holding my breath because I was like, I could feel myself like finding that scene pretty effective.
And they remix some classic ones, like he just beats someone's head in with a hammer at one point. Which is weird, still less effective than the original one, where you just hear someone like they're making the weird croaking noises as they die.
It's one of the greatest kills ever, which you don't even see him get killed. He out of nowhere, a door opens, a hammer hits him,
Yeah.
and then the guy falls
Bonk.
and has a seizure, and you're pretty sure he's going to die. And that's it.
Yeah.
That's the scene.
It's so memorable. That's like his brutality in Mortal Kombat X, I think it is. But yeah, and so to wrap this thing up, after he doesn't kill Sally, and then Sally shoots him, Elsie Fisher's about to run to check on her sister, who has like a rod through her leg, and she's like, "No, don't do that. Don't check on your sister. You have to go chase Leatherface." To be fair, what remains of a theme of the movie does come back here a little bit. She's like, if you run, you'll be scared your whole life. And then she has flashbacks to a school shooting. So she's going to face down her school shooter / Leatherface, except Leatherface set a trap for her where she goes in the old theater. He's set up a chainsaw to make noises to distract her. And then he comes out of nowhere, doesn't immediately kill her somehow. And they fight. Her sister comes back.
It's the Wilson Fisk versus
I had the exact same thought.
What's her name fight?
It's
where she
Kingpin
doesn't
versus Hawkeye.
Yeah.
Well, the second Hawkeye. Yeah, it's the same thing. We're just
Girl
like, wait,
Hawkeye.
why are both of them still alive? You know, and they think they kill Leatherface because they shot him multiple times with a shotgun and chainsawed his face. And there actually is kind of a nice thing where when he's in the water, the mask he's wearing starts to kind of come off his face. I thought that was cool.
The movie looks good.
Yeah, it looks all right.
It's funny because just because the movie looks good, the sunflower scene where all the sunflowers are dead and they're it's just a good set scene, and just having the wide shot of just the sunflowers, and then he just pops up
Yeah.
and walks away. I was like, this is awesome. I'm so excited for more good visuals. And then of course that was it. That's the end of it. Until of course this, I thought this
And then
looked
yeah,
good.
well, Sally comes across his mother's body that he's just propped up with the face gone. I thought that looked kind of neat. It looked like a Halloween store decoration.
Spirit
but
Halloween, yeah.
They actually have an actual nice scene where the sisters are joking around, and it's like, oh, I kind of like these characters. And then one of them just gets pulled out of the car. They've set auto drive, so the car starts driving away as Elsie Fisher is like, no! And she watches her sister gets her head cut off by Leatherface. He does a Leatherface dance, kind of, which doesn't really do for most of the movie, which I was disappointed by, because I like it when he does the chainsaw.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's called like the anxiety dance or something. There's a term for it, the angst dance of angst,
Yeah.
or whatever. And it is a great ending of the first film. Doesn't work here though.
No,
Well,
because
what
it's
if we
just
did it, but with a head.
well, it's just kind of like, well, the one thing that I kind of liked in the movie is I liked the sisters' relationship, and they just had to take that away from me at the end too. So
Yeah,
I was like, and so I just sat there mystified. There is a mid-credit scene where Leatherface walks back to the original house from Texas Chainsaw, which is where Sally, I keep wanting to call her Sally Field, Sally Hardesty has been living apparently. And that's it. That's the movie. There's not much in terms of actual events to talk about. There's one or two character deaths we didn't really touch upon, but yeah, it's just kind of a nothing movie. Nothing really happens. It's just kind of miserable. Bunch of people you don't either like and don't want them to die, or characters you don't know die, or characters you don't want to die, or for no discernible reason.
You get one character that doesn't deserve to die, where the audience will go, oh, why'd they have to die? You also get one oops kill, which they did do in the beginning as well. What was it? The police officer in the front gets like shot in the neck or something.
Yeah,
and it was kind of oopsie, borderline oopsie. And I even said, "Oops,
well,
there it is. That's the one kill."
Then he gets his head smashed in though.
Yes, later.
Yeah.
So it was a gotcha moment. But yeah, this movie just has all of it, where everybody is why did they have to die? Like you have to make them terrible at some point.
Yeah,
but then most of them are just sort of neutral, which frankly makes them more realistic, because most people are more neutral and boring than movie characters.
The problem at the end of the movie can be summed up in a character's name I don't remember because she's barely in the movie, but she's a totally fine. I think her name is Ruth. I'm clicking around.
Is this the banker?
No, the chef's wife.
Yes.
Where
okay, yeah.
She's incidental to the whole movie. She feels bad for the woman, so she volunteers to go to the hospital with her, the old woman, and she has this whole tense scene where you're just like, "Oh man, is she getting ready for help? Is she gonna get away?" And Leatherface just walks over and just stabs her in the stomach, and that's it. Like, there's no frills to it. There's nothing really.
And she doesn't succeed in warning anybody, which narratively would be enough to be like, okay, she got something. But like,
yeah, it's just
nothing.
Kind of miserable, and it's not interesting enough to be entertaining. Or like I guess you would just like punch her in the head and her head exploded. That'd be something like oh well, that was nuts. What the heck? But it's just kind of sad. Yeah, and then the banker lady, who again isn't even aware of the whole thing with the woman and the deed. She's just works there.
Is barely a character and is just visibly upset and
she
scared.
Gets cut in half.
She gets like an intense kill, which is like, she didn't deserve that. Like,
every kill in this movie is like that kill in Jurassic World where that one lady who's babysitting those kids gets viciously eaten by dinosaurs in the air.
Like by 6 of them, and then is dropped into the mouth of a
just
giant
like, oh,
one.
why did that happen? It's like that over and over again. Where it's
and you get one, because in that movie you got the one. That's it.
Yeah.
But whatever. It's not and it's not nearly as fun as the Kong Skull Island one, where the guy gets lifted off of the boat.
Kong Skull Island is a very fun movie.
When the guy gets lifted into the sun, and then the one cuts off his arm in a PG-13 movie.
The biggest, I can't believe this PG-13 thing is the guy who gets Campbell Holocausted. He just gets the thing through
the giant bug spider ant. It steps on him, and you get the sound. It's like,
yeah.
You're like, what was that? And then you look back.
We're sitting here wagging our finger at Texas Chainsaw for being so bad, and then we interspersed with it, we talk about great kills in other movies, and we're like, that was sick. Anyway, this movie's morally depraved. But I maintain there's a framing and like, context for violence, and Texas Chainsaw has no idea what it wants to say or do, so it just makes the whole thing kind of vaguely uncomfortable for me.
It's not a horror fun house like Kong Skull Island, which is a horror fun house. It's like walking through, like, in your township, it's Halloween, let's go to the horror fun house, where it's 15 minutes and you walk through and people are dressed up in costumes and nobody touches you because you didn't sign a waiver, whatever. But it's fun, and that's what Kong Skull Island is, where it's like, let's see who gets picked off, let's see who makes it to the end of the fun house. So having the bizarre kills is like, well, they didn't make it, but at least they went in a fun way. But then this doesn't have any of that. It's not fun. Like, and there's nobody really traveling through it because there's no plot. So they're not even traveling through a maze of plot lines and narrative. It's just, we own this property, ma'am. No, you don't. Oh, you do. Oops, sorry. That's the movie. And then everyone gets killed by Leatherface. Uh-oh, Elon Musk and Teslas. Isn't it funny? Auto drive. Autopilot will be out in 2018. It's barely finished.
Not to be that guy, but I just could not get over the fact that this is supposed to be a 70-year-old guy who's been sitting in a kid's bedroom for like 40 years, and he's able to take multiple shotgun just blasts to the body and get chainsawed in the face, and apparently has the best cardio on earth because he can just run around all day.
And he doesn't have the lore of like a Michael Myers, where at least like
his soul isn't jumping bodies because of an Irish cult or whatever happens in Halloween 4 and 5.
Or just even, is he the boogeyman or not? Is he pure evil?
Is he pure evil incarnate?
That's interesting. Like, at least that is kind of interesting to work with.
You
this
can
is
just
like,
feel me on the other end of the microphone.
I know, you're like, come on.
I don't know.
It works better than Bubba, who is bona fide special needs from the first movie. Like, that is his character, and he was unfortunately born into a family that takes advantage of that. And then in this, he's brilliantly smart. I mean, it's just,
he got to learn something. He's been around. It's implied that he has not left that orphanage since he arrived, which there's a movie there, right? Like, who is this woman that was like, oh, guy who cuts people's faces off. You're just a wayward soul who needs a mom.
She's the real hero.
She's / villain, because if she had just turned him over to the authorities, none of this would have happened. But yeah. It's a movie built on very weird, flimsy. I'm not saying that like my version. I'm not saying a simplified version of the movie would have blown everyone's socks off, but like it wouldn't at least have this weird vibe around it where I felt like all the people who look at Twitter and just grumble like, oh, these darn kids didn't get to write a screenplay where Leatherface kills all the kids that called him boomer online, you know, like,
yeah,
why this movie? But I'm sure there'll be more. I mean, Texas Chainsaw has had objectively some of the worst received sequels of any horror franchise of all time. and it just won't die. So I'm sure we'll get another Texas Chainsaw movie in a couple years where he's kills Uber drivers or something. I don't know. That'd be a movie, right? Where he just keeps ordering food to his house and he just keeps chainsawing when they show up.
It would be in the commercial version. The guy drops off the pizza and he's holding it, and then he chainsaws the slices for the pizza.
Yeah.
He doesn't actually kill anyone, or he just takes the cheese off the pizza and puts it over his face.
Yeah. He needs some guy drops off his, Applebee's or whatever, and he chainsaws the guy, but then he pulls out his phone and he gives him like a $4 tip, gives him a thumbs up, rates him high for his service.
Or he like stops at Papa John's guy, kills the guy, puts on his face, and then delivers the pizza.
Yeah.
Where's our money? We are making these commercials for you guys. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he could, but then he doesn't kill people on the clock because he's a professional, but he uses it to make a map of potential victims.
And they'll all be canon to Texas Chainsaw Massacre stuff, just like the commercials for Twin Peaks that David Lynch directed for Japan.
Of course.
That is a thing, by the way. They are all canon, apparently.
Honestly, though, if you wanted to if you just can't help yourself, you need to make the non-stop killing machine character in movies be sort of characters who are somewhat heroic. Make a movie where it's like Jason Voorhees or Leatherface, who they selectively pick victims based on something.
Which Jason Voorhees does. He doesn't kill kids. He's never killed kids.
Michael Myers doesn't kill babies, apparently.
That's right. He doesn't kill babies, but he'll kill children. There's a
children, and he'll like stick their bodies in swing sets, apparently. But like, there's that great, it goes around every once in a while online. It's sort of somewhat perpetually viral among horror fans, but there's that great Hellraiser comic where a girl who's being abused by her dad gets the puzzle box and she convinces Cenobites to like take care of her abusive father. And it's actually like a really kind of cute comic where like they're like, oh, what? And she's like, these are my new friends. Like, I think she's like, these are angels and they're here to help me. And it's just like Pinhead's just like, we have such sights to show you. And you're just like, yeah, take that.
That's great.
So Melvin, do you recommend Texas Chainsaw Massacre on Netflix?
Oh my gosh, absolutely not. Obviously it viscerally affected me, made me upset. And I'm glad to be a few days away from it, because now it's, distance between the essentially trauma, because like it's true, like that you can have traumatic visuals in movies. And so, yeah, I definitely don't recommend it. I don't even necessarily like, it's unfortunate because like I said this in another discussion you and I had, I think it's actually in an episode coming out later, where a movie can have at least one good scene and then that makes it like, yeah, definitely check it out. There's other stuff you'll enjoy. And then this one scene's great. And this is like the opposite where, well, actually all of it's bad, but like it could have been bearable if it wasn't for the bus scene. And then you get there and I'm like, I can't imagine watching it. It's just too miserable, hopeless, and unhappy. And then also dumb. Like people could have walked the other way and left. Like it's the borderline equivalent of bullying on the internet. Haha, close your eyes. Haha, close the laptop. Like, haha, Leatherface chopping up your friend. Just step out the door, leave the bus. Like, and then nobody does. So let's just rub our hands on the window. Do you remember that scene in Titanic? Let's do that, but with blood. No, I don't like this at all. It's a disaster. Elsie Fisher is innocent. I hope she has some other great movies.
She's pretty good in this.
There was one scene that I thought, like, I don't think she knows what to do, like, as a reaction. I think it's when Sarah Yarkin picks up the chainsaw and is going to get her back. Elsie Fisher's face looks real funny. Like, she looks confused. And I was just like watching it, like, I don't think the director told her to do anything. So it just looks really funny. It looks like a Twitch streamer when something's happening in a video game that they're not supposed to like they should be talking and they're not. It's funny. But other than that, I thought her performance was fine. She plays the most dramatic character in the film, arguably. I guess Sarah Yarkin is a bit dramatic because she's unfortunately being told to try and act dramatic. Well, I guess it would make sense if you found out you almost essentially you contributed to the death of an old woman by kicking her out of her house. Like, you'd be pretty upset. But yeah, Elsie Fisher innocent. Go watch 8th Grade. That's it. That's all I got. And yes, Mark Burnham is the guy who plays. That's not Bo Burnham's brother. I was just making a joke, but I found that funny that his name is Burnham. So
Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Not a fan of this one. It's somehow one of the worst ones in this franchise, which is kind of crazy considering how bad some of the movies in the Texas Chainsaw. It's not memorable. Like the fourth Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie is terrible, but has a lot of memorable elements because you get to see some really good actors just hamming it up. It doesn't have interesting spin on the mythos or characters. It doesn't add anything to the Texas Chainsaw story at all. And the few things it does comment on, it makes worse. I don't like they brought back the original final girl from the first movie just to kill her off for seemingly no reason. So everything it adds to the franchise is a negative. It also doesn't bring anything of its own to the table. And then, like we said, it's so misguided and weird that it made everything that happens not particularly memorable. And it doesn't really have any kills that stand out, or it won't make anyone's like highlight reel of kills or anything. So even if you're in it for that, that is minimal. So not a thumbs down. Boo.
So then what recommendation do you give for Texas Chainsaw 1, like the first one?
It's extremely well made. The original Texas Chainsaw is an actual true example of you couldn't make that movie today. Not for the dumb reasons people bring up, but because it is such a movie as time. There's no way they could have a set that's the way it is now because of the requirements and because of SAG and all that stuff. It is a movie that can only exist in the time it was made. It's grimy. The whole movie has a layer of filth on it. And you feel like you're watching something you shouldn't watching it. It really does feel like you found a snuff film in someone's attic that you're watching while still having some real substance there. Like Tobe Hooper has gone on record as saying that it's a movie about meat. He's juxtaposing the way we treat cattle and stuff in the meat industry to the way we treat human beings. And that in itself brings up some interesting questions. But like you're talking about with the characters and the way that this weird dysfunctional family loves each other, contrasted with these mean teenagers who are being bullied, but don't deserve to get horribly beaten to death with cameras or anything.
In movie logic, they do. Because why not? Because it's a movie.
It is something that you just don't see today, both in terms of how pulpy and grimy it is, but also because of the care that goes into it. And it just helps with your film language. Like there's so much about Texas Chainsaw, the original one from 1974, that has gone on now to influence things, to be commented on. It's considered the movie that created the trope of the final girl. That's one of the things that's credited with the movie. So that's how deep these roots go. With
same
Texas
year
Chainsaw.
as Black Christmas too, which is crazy.
Wow, what a year!
Yeah, it was a good year.
Yeah, it's shocking in a way that I can't, like, I've watched a lot of modern movies that have all types of effects for gore and subject matter, but Texas Chainsaw, it makes you comfortable watching it.
And it's just borderline goreless. There's like nothing. There is
so
no Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Regard,
this movie, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, actually has a Chainsaw
it has
Massacre.
a titular massacre in it.
But the Texas Chainsaw Massacre film is like part of the political theater, part of the theater of the film, where like when you actually watch it, what's terrifying isn't the chainsaw. Like it's so much more that's scary about it and wonderful, frankly.
And
so
I will say that like subsequent films in the franchise, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is just insane. It is the Army of Darkness to that movie's Evil Dead. It's borderline comedy. There's like actual fights of people with chainsaws like fighting each other. It's just nonsense with some great acting. There's some great character stuff. If you're a fan of more schlocky horror from like the 80s, that's the movie for you. The rest of the franchise is kind of worth exploring for those reasons. And the Platinum Dunes remake isn't great, but it is better than the other ones in that regard. What I'm saying is there's way more Texas Chainsaw out there for you to look at rather than this. This is, if you've watched everything else and you're a completionist, go for it, I guess. But yeah, there's no reason to watch this. Like, genuinely, there's so many other Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies out there. Just searching through all my streaming services to try and find Leatherface, almost every service has one of the other movies on there. So go nuts. Watch the original, and then from there, selectively watch based on your own personal tastes. Which is, I guess, something kind of interesting about it, where there's a Texas Chainsaw Massacre for every horror fan taste out there, with this one being for people who have bad taste. That's right, I said it.
It's true.
Oh my!
You said it's for bad taste. I said it's for school shooters. So let's.
I think that's
put
a little
those
harsh.
on the.
I'm seeing like go on IMDb, go on wherever. You're seeing people go 7 out of 10, 6 out of 10. It's okay.
Look, I saw on
Which I can
Letterboxd that
see
some
that.
people had some positive reviews, and I liked them. I just gave them a little heart, maybe out of charity. But I did not like it. And sometimes you just got to say something. Sometimes you got to say something controversial on podcasts. You know what I mean? No, but I hate this movie. Don't watch it. It's a disaster. Just go watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the first one. And then you watch the second one because it's also still Tobe Hooper, who self-recognized, I can't recreate the tone of the first film, so I'm just going to make something totally different, which in itself is fascinating and worthwhile.
Some of them get really bad, though. I don't want to pretend like it's a batting 1,000, but
Sure, I'm not recommending the rest. I just know those two. So recommendations. What do you got for recommendations?
So I feel like based on this, I had to recommend some sort of horror film.
You can if you'd like.
I know I know that we already recommended like 5 movies previously.
I'll make a unique letterbox list that's just titled "Movies Recommended in the Texas Chainsaw" to watch instead of the Texas Chainsaw.
I have my Christian recommendation first. Actually, I know I am on the podcast as being somebody who likes books and specifically Christian books and commentaries. However, my true love is study Bibles. I love weird Bibles. I love Bibles, all kinds of interesting features. And I'm going to recommend what I think might be my favorite study Bible I've ever gotten. Someone on Macari sold it to me for way lower than it's worth. Thank you. It is the Reformation Heritage Study Bible. I'm wondering what the crossover between people who know the Reformation heritage and were really into our review of a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie would be. But if many of our listeners probably be familiar with Reformation heritage, they put out all kinds of great restored old reformer stuff. My commentary on the Heidelberg Catechism was put out by them, and so Joel Beek, who's writing the Reformed Systematic Theology set that's coming out and is one of the best Reformed Systematic Theologies I've ever seen, is the editor for this, Joel Beeke. And he writes all of the study notes in this, which are wonderful. However, there are 2 main features that set this study Bible apart from everything else. First is that it's designed to be used in the context of family worship time. So in addition to study notes, it includes sections throughout to help you utilize these passages for family study time. They're very similar to some of the study notes you see in like the Life Application Study Bible, which is not a study Bible I'm a huge fan of. It is the #1 most popular study Bible in the world, but I'm not a huge fan of it because I find the notes not to be particularly depthful, but you get a good mixture of both really great scholarship as well as interesting self-study questions, as well as things to use if you're someone who leads like family devotional time or something. The other great feature is that in the back includes all of the creeds, confessions, and canons of the Reformed tradition. So you get the Westminster Confession, you get the Heidelberg Catechism, you get the Apostle of Nicene Creed, you get the canons of Dort. It's everything you need, as well as a multi-page guide on what to do if you decide to become a Christian, and what are the things you should consider and do. What are the roles of like worship in your life? What is the role of Bible study time in your life? It is a great study Bible just to hand somebody to go, here you go, off and running. It has all of these great features. They don't sponsor us or anything. I mean, I would love it if Reformation Heritage started sponsoring us.
Specifically sponsored after the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
But the Reformation Heritage Study Bible is incredible. I use the ESV Study Bible. I use the Reformation Study Bible. I use the MacArthur Study Bible. I consider this one head and shoulders above all of them. I said it. I don't know if there's a study Bible Twitter, but if there is one, come at me and we can debate. But that's my enthusiastic study Bible recommendation for this episode.
I'm going to recommend a podcast. I decided I was going to recommend this podcast months ago, and we went on hiatus. I guess it was 2 months ago. And then I've had a lot to recommend since then, but I kept coming back and saying, no, I'm going to stick to this. I am recommending, with qualifiers that I'll make clear, and you can make them clear too, because I know you've listened to this too. I'm going to recommend Till Death Do Us Blart, a podcast where a group of guys specifically watch Paul Blart Mall Cop 2. And every year they watch it, and then they release an episode on Thanksgiving talking about it. And the stipulation is they have to do it for the rest of their lives. But if one of them dies, the next person closest to the person who died then has to come in and join the podcast to continue it for the rest of eternity. It is very, very funny. Laugh out loud funny. I had of course seen the first movie. And then I started the podcast and I was like, I got to watch the second one already. So I rented it and then I finished it and then I bought it. So now I have it. It's actually, I have on my shelf of movies. I have some on display and one of them is Paul Blart Mall Cop 2. And it showed up like it was a new copy from Amazon and it just showed up and the box is damaged. Like it's just so ruined. But in the theme of the film, I think it works. And of course, one of the best episodes was, and it's not even the best because it's a good episode, but it's the best because, or one of the best. Of course, I say that, but every episode's really funny. Is a commentary track where you start the episode when you start the movie and you watch it and listen to it together. It's very funny. I have one more episode to go. Dan, do you have anything to say about that?
First, I'll add. I feel like anyone who will know this already will already know about the podcast, but it is a combination of the Worst Idea Ever podcast and the Brothers McElroy, aka my brother and me, and the Adventure Zone, and it's those people coming together. So if you like any of the McElroy Brothers podcasts, this is an obvious must listen for you. And as somebody who is a fan of the McElroy Brothers, even with all of the various McElroy brother quirks that they've accumulated over the years, I definitely think it's a really funny podcast. It's definitely worth listening to, and it's definitely like my second or third favorite of those. I'm not an Adventure Zone person. I just have never been able to get into any D&D podcasts. I plan on getting into one of them eventually. It's not quite as good as like Peak Bam Bam, but it's definitely, and I'm a big Sawbones fan, but it's definitely way funnier than a lot of other podcasts out there in general, but also something like Schmanners or Wonderful or any of those other shows. So, yeah.
The only qualifiers are that they definitely curse a lot. So if you're listening to our podcast, because we don't, then you're probably not going to enjoy theirs because they do. And they don't necessarily, well, it's secular. So they talk about all kinds of things. And so
the McElroys were raised in a Baptist home, and that does come up once in a while in their various shows. So. And
they're not transgressive. They're not like offensive or anything. Yeah. Like, so it's, but it's great. You get to hear about the Shadow Man. You get to meditate on one of the best scenes ever for featuring a bird. It is a very fun podcast. So I've been sitting on that since December 31st. So I'm finally free to recommend other things now. I'm not going to recommend those things right now. Dan, what is your fun recommendation?
So, going in a completely
because your Christian recommendation isn't ever fun, because Christianity's not fun. It's supposed to be rules and law. Don't you understand?
I feel like I try and have this like persona on the podcast of this like very like not hip person, but somebody who's like talks about like like horror movies and blah blah blah. But then I'm like, man, nothing more fun than a really good study Bible, and I'm like 100% like genuine. This cool guy is a facade. Not that
so you said you were going to do a horror movie though.
Yeah, I was going to do a horror recommendation, and I going the complete other end of the spectrum as far as horror goes. I'm going to recommend a television show that I watched, and one that you've talked about doing an episode on. It's called Archive 81. It is on Netflix, and I watched it during our hiatus, so I'm mostly positive I recommended it previously. But Archive 81 is right up my alley in terms of subject matter. I'm somebody who's really into analog horror. I watch all those YouTube channels and stuff, and I really specifically like the idea of the way that we interact with events that have already taken place. And specifically, analog horror focuses on a sort of like melancholy nostalgia of things like VHS tapes and cassettes and those sorts of things. So Archive 81 is about a guy who gets hired for a job. He's a really well-known archivist, specifically in his restoring old VHS tapes. And he gets hired for a mysterious job to restore tapes from a camera that was destroyed in a mysterious fire. And as he starts restoring the tapes, so unfolds the mystery of what happened in that fire. And I will not go any further. I will say that the final episode is extremely divisive. The show is only about 8 episodes long, and it's based on a podcast. Apparently, it's very different from the podcast. So if you've already listened to the podcast, or if you've already watched the show and want more Archive 81, you can definitely go back and listen to the podcast as well. But the ending is divisive. I personally was not a huge fan of the last 20 minutes of the 8th episode, but for 7 3/4 of episodes, I loved it. It's
Nice.
I love mysteries. I love a lot of the types of horror things that the show brushes up against. They're just things that I enjoy, and it's not particularly part of why I say it's like on the other spectrum is there's really no gore, there's no like really shocking material in it or anything. I can definitely see certain aspects of it where Christian viewers might be uncomfortable with some of the types of, I will say, threats that pop up. There is a kind of occulty bent to some of the elements of the show. So if that's something that, as a Christian, you're not comfortable with, that's the closest thing to like a content warning I'll ever throw up. I just know that for some Christians, they really hate that stuff. Like my wife wouldn't watch it with me for that reason. So, but I love that stuff. So there you go. Archive 81, it's on Netflix. A lot of you have probably already seen it because it was like super duper high trending when it came out because it just very suddenly made a huge splash. But yeah.
Thanks so much for checking out this episode of Cinematic Doctrine. If you enjoyed this episode, consider leaving a review and subscribing to the podcast. And as mentioned before, Cinematic Doctrine has a Patreon. For as little as $3 a month, you're opted into a once-a-month movie poll where you decide a movie we discuss on the podcast. There are other unique benefits that come with supporting the podcast, so be sure to check that out at patreon.com/cinematic doctrine. A special shout out to those who support at the Art House Theater tier on Patreon. Thank you so much, Mom, Dad, Melanie, Shirleyan, and Thomas. You guys are the best, and your continued monetary support is greatly appreciated. Until next time, stay cool. Want some Cinematic Doctrine swag? You're in luck! We've got 3-inch Cinematic Doctrine logo stickers exclusive for Patreon supporters. Perfect for your travel mug or laptop. Head over to patreon.com/cinematic doctrine, link in the show notes, and choose the Independent Theater tier. Doing so will net you other perks too. But let's be real, the podcast stickers are the coolest perk. So get yourself some podcast stickers by supporting on Patreon.